video showing a white orb UFO coming out of the ocean off Kuwait has been found on the US Department of Defense's own network, a congressional hearing was being told last night. This is evidence given to the House representatives on unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs. The journalist Michael Shellenberger said he had been told of the footage by a source in recent weeks. He said the 13-minute-long high-definition colour video was of the orb 20 miles off the Kuwait coast and was filmed from a helicopter. Tom Rogan is a journalist at the Washington Examiner covering security and intelligence issues, including UAPs. Thanks for coming on the programme, Tom. Tell us who gave evidence at this hearing, who they are and what they said.
Yeah, good to be with you. So we had Lou Elizondo, who formerly headed up the Pentagon's sort of UFO research agency until 2017, a former Navy admiral who was in charge of essentially meteorological phenomena for the Navy. And then two others, a journalist, Michael Shellenberger, and a guy who worked for NASA and some defense contractors, Michael Gold. And so they were, basically it was a kind of just, pretty sensationalist in terms of the media attention, but big gathering of UFO topics of discussion.
And the journalist there, Michael Shellenberg, pointed to a piece of information he was given by a source, from where he did not say, about a series of videos that are held by the US Department of Defense or various other US government agencies that appear to show unidentified aerial phenomena doing things that are currently out of our scientific understanding or ability.
Correct. And so Shellenberger had sort of had this broader piece that led him to being on the stage talking about a classified Pentagon program to recover UFOs that, are not Russian, Chinese, Elon Musk, US stuff. I personally haven't been able to verify that. I think, other journalists haven't. But he's absolutely correct as a point of fact that the US government has, and I know this from my own sources, it's not really a secret, some pretty strange video, especially from more recent years where camera, because, technology has improved, the ability to capture things with a camera and then also, sensor platforms like sonar, radar, satellite imagery. There's some stuff in the data banks, let's say, that is very, very hard to explain without getting into areas that traditionally would, people start calling you a tinfoil hat wearing individual.
And this is a program known as, or at least he says is a program known as, Immaculate Constellation, a 12-page document purporting to detail a classified UAP crash retrieval program. So what are we left with, Tom, at the end of this session? Clearly a lot more questions, but I detected that the lawmakers they were giving their evidence to were becoming increasingly frustrated that, one, they couldn't get clear answers in a public hearing, and two, were pretty convinced that actually the US government was sitting on a hell of a lot of information that they weren't, for some reason, even if they thought it was absolutely nothing at all, making public.
Yeah, and so the first point of transparency is both one that the government has a legitimate and illegitimate argument on. The legitimate one is that they don't want to declassify everything related to unidentified aerial phenomena because there are US programs still in existence involving, spy planes, drones that have not been declassified. So they don't want that leaking because obviously that would help the Chinese and Russians. The second point where it's not legitimate is that when the Russians, for example, send bombers into Alaska in the same way as they do, sometimes into the North Sea, and the RAF or the US Air Force release videos showing the intercept, they're very happy to do that within a couple of days. But when they see these sort of UFO things, there's this deep reluctance to release any video without really a compelling argument as to why that is the case. So that transparency point, is a legitimate one. I think that what's sort of perhaps more interesting here is that the members of Congress, some of those who were there yesterday, are, to sort of borrow a word, kind of more backbench, members of the House of Representatives. But in the Senate, including with Marco Rubio, who's going to be Trump's Secretary of State, there has been a big push, much more behind the scenes, to try and declassify some of this stuff, but certainly to have Congress brief more on it. And the simple point is, as you know, as absurd as it sounds, but I wouldn't say it obviously because of the stigma that attunes to it. 10, 20 years from now, I think we will be talking much more openly that this very small percentage of these things really are some kind of either aliens or extra-dimensional, and the rest of it is whether, people who are making stuff up, spy stuff. But that is why there's this attention to it, because the people who've seen the high-fidelity imagery and the sensor data, again, in the Senate, Marco Rubio, who is the vice chair of the Intelligence Committee at the moment, that these are serious people questioning it. But really, the idea of some grand conspiracy in the US government, I think that may well have been the case in the 1940s and 50s where this stuff started happening. Today, it's really they don't know what to do about it because they don't know how to say, we can't control our airspace and we don't know what it is.
Tom, really good to have you on. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Rogan, journalist at the Washington Examiner, covering security and intelligence issues, including UAPs, which I would, again, just gently suggest there are people, of course, who believe that these are ulterior dimensional alien species who are coming to visit us, particularly over nuclear sites and high energy sites, military sites in particular, or it's just stuff that the government cannot explain and is clearly of concern because they've got it on footage of an F-16 fighter jet and they're tracking it, and you can see this stuff moving across the screen and dipping into the sea and then coming out the sea and then shooting off at speeds. It is amazing. Do you think? Or am I tinfoil hatting?